All right, guys, I'm here with my boy Louie, owner of Wake Up and Work. Really motivational guy. Make sure to check out his pages, all right?
What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me today. My name is Louis Pisano. I'm the owner and founder of Wake Up and Work, and this is episode 2 of the Wake Up and Work podcast. First and foremost, thank you to those of you that joined me for episode 1 last week of the Wake Up and Work podcast. It was the very first introduction into what the brand actually means, a little bit about myself, and just a brief background on the brand and how it came to be. What I want to dive deeper in today is a little bit about my life and kind of where I've been and where I've come from and what brought me to being the man that I am today. And the reason I want to put this out there and really kind of open up my life to a lot of you that really don't know me, and then also some of you that know me extremely well, and a lot of this won't come as any surprise to you. I'm no Instagram celebrity. I'm no Instagram model. I'm no regular celebrity. I'm no professional athlete. I'm no life coach with 1 million followers. I'm nobody special. All I am is the average human being with the same kind of experiences as a lot of you. And one thing I want to resonate and relate with a lot of you is that life happens and it happens to all of us the same way. And the reason I really want to put my life out there is because I believe a lot of my purpose is about helping you understand that you're not the only one that has been through something that you're going through right now, that you've been through before, or that you're going to end up going through down the road. And what's really important to remember is that there's so many successful people in this world that have been through the same things that you've been through. And not to say that I'm anywhere near the level of success that I think I'm capable of being, is that I've reached a particular level of success in my life to where I'm at now at 29 years old, to where I can understand and relate to some of you that really find a hard time believing in the fact that you can be happy and successful in life. If you joined me on episode 1 of the Wake Up and Work podcast last week, a lot of what I talked about is believing in yourself to overcome your adversity, and to go after the things that you believe and love in life. And for me, it's really about reflecting back and thinking about where you've come from, the things that you've been through in life, and just kind of where you're at today in your own journey. So for me, I'm just a kid from New Jersey right now, living in San Diego, California, with my incredible girlfriend, our 2 dogs, and our 1 baby kitten. But I come from just a regular area in New Jersey over on the East Coast. I say a lot is I'm just a kid from Jersey. I'm just a kid from Jersey trying to reach his goals, trying to reach his own vision, and trying to reach my own level of success and happiness and what that looks like for myself. To really understand a lot of what I've been through and to be able to relate and resonate with what I've been through, because I'm sure a lot of you out there are going through the same things that I went through in life. Growing up, we had an all-American family back in Ocean Township, New Jersey, until I was about 7, 8 years old. Until that time, I was living with both of my parents, both of my brothers. We were all under one roof. Around 7, 8 years old, I lost 2 of my uncles in a matter of 1 year. And then after that, life really shit the bed and went downhill for me. My father and his mother, my grandmother, they didn't get along. It's simply put as they pretty much hated each other for some time. And that caused a lot of turmoil in my family. So my grandmother was living with us at the time, so we decided to move out. The only problem was we didn't have anywhere to live. And I'm 7 years old. I'm in, I believe, second grade at this time. And my 2 brothers, my mother and my father, we move out, and we moved around for a little bit. Most of that time, before we found a house within the next year, we spent 6 months living in a rundown motel in the middle of a highway in Neptune, New Jersey. It's something that you would see out of a movie. It was almost like a Bates Motel concept. The water was filled with green water and trash and broken bicycles and glass and garbage and just fucking disgusting. A lot of the rooms at this motel on the side of the road on the highway were were broken into, boarded up, beat to shit. It was just your run of the mill motel that you see in a movie that nobody wants to go to. We lived there for about 6 months. We had 1 bedroom with 2 beds and a bathroom. All of our stuff was thrown into storage for some time, and that was my life for 6 months while I was in second grade. During that time, my brothers and I, being in a different town, but also going to school in Ocean Township, where we started school that year, we were taking the little short yellow bus. A lot of you know this as the short bus. So we would have to take that bus from our school to the motel every day. One day I was leaving school and I didn't get on my normal bus, and my second grade teacher realized that. He simply asked me where I was going, why I wasn't getting on my bus, and I told him that we had to take the short bus for some time because we were not living where we were to start the year. He questioned me, he called my parents, he called the principal, he brought me into the principal's office, and my parents had to come and pick me up. It was a little embarrassing. The teachers didn't know what was going on. The principal didn't fully know what was going on, just had an idea. But after this incident, everybody knew what was going on. And being in second grade, the last thing you want people to know, especially your friends, is that you're living in a rundown motel with your family. Now, the reason I want to talk to you guys about this is because bullying played a huge part growing up when I was a kid. I can't speak on behalf of my brothers, but for me, I really cared about what people thought. It wasn't until about 5, 6 years ago where I stopped giving a fuck, and it simply messed with my self esteem. Um, so again, it got out that we were living in a motel. We were in a current situation that we were not fond of. We didn't choose, but it was a situation that we were in. What mattered most was that we were all together as a family. Now, what I want this to resonate with some of you out there, and for a lot of you to understand, is that no matter what you go through in life, there's always worse. We could have been homeless. We could have been in a shittier motel. We could have ended up in a house that was even shittier. So looking back and reflecting back on that part of my life really helps me put things in perspective. There's a lot of people in this world that have it much worse than we do, much worse than we did at the time when we were living in the motel. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that have similar stories. For the next 6 months, we moved into multiple family homes, multiple apartments, and then 3 to 4 homes and apartments later, we finally found a house back in Ocean Township. So this is where we lived for the next 3 years, and during those 3 years, life was perfect. We had our big family parties again every holiday. We had birthday parties. We had a lot of cool neighbors that, if you were a kid and you never played the game of Manhunt, then I question your childhood being any kind of fun. But again, we were that all American family again, and life was just dandy um, until I was in fifth grade. Fifth grade for me was 2002. It was a little bit after 9/11 in New York City. And during that year, my grandfather started to get sick. Um, this is my father's father. He had heart problems, he had some breathing problems, and then Thursday, January 10th, 2002, my grandfather passed away. My grandfather was that old school Italian guy. He held the family together. Um, he was that guy that cursed a lot, but he didn't really mean anything by it. It was just the way that he talked. And I know a lot of you out there have people in your family that are the same exact way. And at the time, he was, pretty much my original hero, the person that I looked up to the most besides my parents. And when I found out he had passed away, I screamed at my parents. I told them that they were lying to me, and I ran away. And when I ran away 3 blocks to my middle school or to my elementary school, and I camped out in the baseball field dugout. And then I cried for 3, 4 hours. And then I finally walked back home and thought it would change, but the nightmare still happened. And again, the reason I'm explaining this to you guys is because so many of you out there have dealt with so much pain, but you've never gotten it off your chest before. And I'm here to tell you that it is okay to get that off your chest. It's very okay to talk about your problems, and it's very okay to talk to people that care about you, that you care about, that you know can help you with your issues. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Later that year, my parents were going through some issues. There was there were drugs and alcohol involved in my parents' separation, and a few months later, after my grandfather passed away, I went to visit my cousin Chris, who just graduated college. He was 18 years old, and he was getting ready to go into the Marines. I was there for 2 weeks, and then I came back home. And upon coming back home, I entered the house, and the only person in there was my mother, sitting on a couch, crying with her head in her hands. I didn't understand the capacity of what was going on. I didn't understand what was happening. All I knew was that was how I found out that my parents split up while I was away. My father left with my 2 brothers, and he went back to my grandmother's house, which was only a couple miles away, and left my mother in the house by herself. My bed was there. We had a TV and a couch, and we had a month to get out of the house. With everything going on, I had ended up moving into my grandmother's house with my father and my brothers, and then unfortunately, my mother ended up homeless for a few months. Um, During this time, I can't tell you how many times that we spent the nights in a motel with her just to keep her company. How many times we went on a drive to the beach. How many times we went to a movie or the mall just so she didn't have to sit in the car. And this was a time in my mother's life and in our lives that wasn't very suitable for our style of living. And when I say that, it's, we went from being an all American family to being a broken, disoriented family, like a lot of you have been through in your life. And the reason I'm getting this out there is because, again, there's so many of you that really think you're the only one with your problems. But I'm here to tell you over and over again that life happens to every single one of us. What matters is what you're going to do next to make sure that you live a better life than you are at the time. And that wasn't it for my mother's homelessness. Um, it was a very, very tough time for all of us. And then it was going into sixth grade, so I was going into middle school. And the one thing I'll never forget is my first day of sixth grade. My mother was still there at the bus stop, cheering me on, and just being there for us, even though she really didn't have anywhere to live at the time. She bounced around from hotel to motel to apartment to a friend's couch for a few months because at the time she also lost her job. There's one fond memory that I have that has stuck with me for a very long time. It was a cold winter morning. My mom picked me up, just the two of us. Again, to understand this, I had a different relationship with my mother than anybody else in my family at this point in my life. She was my best friend. She picked me up. We went and got Dunkin' Donuts. We drove out to the beach, and then we just sat in the car and ended up watching the sunset. This was one of the best memories I have in my childhood, even though the situation doesn't really call for a happy-go-lucky situation. But just being there with my mother, knowing that she was okay, knowing that I still had her there with me, really kind of changed my whole perspective on life. A couple months later, she met an incredible guy. His name's Rick. He's pretty much our stepfather. They've been together to this day. This is going back almost 20 years at this point. Rick pretty much saved my mother's life. And we owe him a lot, my brothers and I. Looking back on life, putting things in perspective, and kind of really taking in what my family was like, before I became a teenager and during those years, kind of it makes me realize that as shitty as those situations were, as unfortunate as that time in our lives was, it's really helped mold me into the person that I am today because I know where I was at one point in my life from a dark mentality perspective, and I don't ever want to get back there. And a lot of that had to do with the person that I ended up becoming in my late teens and early 20s, which was a pretty much borderline alcoholic who was depressed, full of anxiety and depression, that just didn't really know how to handle life and everything that was thrown his way. But again, the moral of this entire story, to keep going with you guys, is that I don't care what you've been through. Later I'm going to get to the point where how I got to this point in my career and where I'm at with this level of success that I'm at. And that's not a high success, it's just my level of success right now. And how capable you are to achieve whatever you want to achieve and get on the right path, no matter what the fuck you've been through. You guys have heard part of my life so far, and I'm not even 12 years old, and it's already shaped me to who I am today. Now, to go back to when I was 12 years old, my mother finally had somewhere to live. I was living with my father, my grandmother, and my two brothers going into middle school. Middle school was a little bit of a blur. There weren't too many tough times, too many rough times, other than the fact that my family just didn't have money. There were days where I questioned whether or not I was going to get lunch money from either one of my parents. And there were days where we just didn't. That's just life sometimes. And luckily, I had a very good supporting cast throughout middle school between my friends, between sports, between teachers. And this is when I really started to connect with a lot of my teachers because, it was hard for me to hide my emotions in middle school. It was a lot easier in high school and especially in college because alcohol helped me hide those emotions. But in middle school was just different. This is a time when a lot of rumors started to fly about the drug and alcohol effect on my family. Um, We didn't have the best reputation as the Pizzanos in Ocean Township. And those of you that know my family, those of you that watch this and listen to this, I'm sure you can relate to kind of what I mean by that. And I know a lot of you understand that. At the same time, there's a lot of you that are going to appear in this that had no idea. Um, this isn't a sympathy reach. This is really just helping a lot of people understand that, again, so many people have the same story as you. So many people look like you from their background. And what I mean by that is by what they've been through. I feel very comfortable talking about my life, talking about my family, and talking about where I've been for the last 20 years of my life, just because I know that even if it's just one person, it's going to resonate with one person per day, and it's going to help people be able to understand that no matter how much bullshit they go through, they're going to be able to make it. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I believe my purpose is, and it's to really help make a difference in a lot of your lives. And this is how I know how to do that. A lot of it is about talking your truth and just kind of putting everything out there for people to hear. And the purpose of that is to help encourage others to understand that it's okay if you've been through something. Unfortunately, having an Italian family, I've dealt with a lot of death, and that just comes with the territory in a big family. But again, not to go too much off track, I want to jump back into where I was 12 years old, back in middle school. Middle school was a really good time. I had an older cousin who was in eighth grade when I was in sixth grade, and our middle school was sixth through seventh grade. So a lot of the eighth graders knew me. A lot of the seventh graders knew me because my older brother was in seventh grade. So I knew a lot of people in the school. We had a reputation, um, and at the time, it was actually a pretty good reputation. My older cousin and brother were the shit. They were really cool kids. They were the cool kids in school, and I helped try to follow suit. And they were also my best friends at the time. I hung out with them all the time, and this is when I really started to get to know some of the older kids, and that translated through many years of my life. Which to this point in 2020, at 29 years old, I have a lot of friends that are 32, 33 years old, simply because of the people that I've met throughout my life, through my older brother, my older cousins, so on and so forth. But again, throughout middle school, times were tough. We didn't have a lot of money in the family. My dad and my grandmother were bickering and fighting every single day. It was nonstop. Sometimes the cops would get called on our house just because the fighting wouldn't stop. Being a teenager, you really don't know how to handle that. One thing that did translate to, though, is it affected the friendships I had with some of my other friends in school. It got out. The reputation continued to proceed who I was. And there were some of my friends who weren't even allowed in my house simply because of my last name and what their parents believed about my family or chose to decide about my family. And, that started to take a toll from a mental perspective. So for me, the thing that really saved me throughout middle school was just playing sports year round between baseball, basketball, and football. And part of the reason that I stuck to sports through the end of high school was that it kept me away from being home. And even more so, it gave me the ability to continue to hang out with my friends. One day a few of us were hanging out. I went to the bathroom and I was coming back, but I heard one of my friends on the phone with his parents. And ironically enough, they were on speakerphone. And his mother told him that she didn't want him going to my house because of who I was. And then I ended up finding out that he and a couple others would end up having to get dropped off at another friend's down the street from us, so they would walk to my house to be able to come over. I was grateful for the fact that I still had these friends, and that they were really cool about it, and that they understood that I wasn't what people expected me to be or assumed me to be, simply because of my last name. And this is what's helped me carry a chip on my shoulder for my entire life. And I used to set out to want to prove people wrong, but what I came to realize was that the most important thing in my life was really about proving myself right. Because the older I got, the more I realized that it wasn't about proving people wrong. That's just the bonus. What's more important is that proving yourself right helps you attain goal after goal, and it makes you want to go after more and more. And the more you are able to prove yourself right, the more empowering you become to really achieve bigger goals and higher goals and set higher standards and expectations for yourself. So again, going back to middle school, I had those issues that we dealt with. But again, my friends were everything throughout middle school. They helped keep me sane. They helped keep me away from home simply because I was just really afraid to be home, because I was afraid it would put me in a dark place just because of what my family was like And when I say that, I don't mean I had a bad family. I didn't hate my family. I didn't hate my parents. I never blamed my parents for what happened to us. What I mean is that I just felt alone. And being with my friends and playing sports really made me feel not so much alone. And again, telling you guys this to get this off my chest, to really start to tell you my story, is to help you understand that if you feel alone, there are ways around it. If you feel alone, there are ways to mask it in a sense where you're not just hiding it, but you're putting yourself in a position to be happier. And hanging out with my friends made me happier than anything. Playing sports made me happier than anything because it took my mind away from my reality at home. Moving along, again, we never really had much money as a family growing up. So from the time I was born to, the time I was able to take care of myself when I was 22, 23 years old, I went on 2 family vacations. When we were in 4th grade, we took a family trip down to Florida. And when I was in 8th grade, my father, my younger brother, and a couple other families took a vacation to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. The reason I'm going into this is because I had a bunch of friends that went on vacation every spring break, every summer, sometimes more than once. And again, this goes back to what I said in episode 1. I really envied a lot of my friends. A lot of them had money, a lot of their families had money. And the more I started to realize that I was envying them, the more I started to realize that I wasn't honing in like who I was as a person. And it was tough for me at the time because I didn't fully understand, but a lot of what I went through in life forced me to grow up at a younger age, at least more than anybody else that I knew at my age. And the more I reflect back on life, the more I thank the fact that I went through so many things that I went through at such a young age, because it made me mature in a way that I wouldn't have done so if I had the same life as the friends that I envied. And the person I am today is grateful for everything that I went through in my life. I have an incredible relationship with both of my parents, both of my brothers, and our family is great. Years later, after all that shit went down, we are all in a good place. And yeah, it sucks that we went through a lot of those hardships, both together and separately. At the same time, it helped shape us into the individuals that we are today. And it's hard to really be upset about that. Yes, things could have happened differently. Yes, decisions could have been made that were better. But life's hard to explain. I'm a big believer in life, and everything happens for a reason. Um, and I think this life happened to me because it helped me understand who I am as a person and the role and purpose that I play in this life. And that's to really help relate and resonate with a lot of you to understand this about life and to really help make your lives better and make you see the fact that, again, no matter what you go through, nobody cares. Nobody's going to care. And when I say that, I mean life is not going to care. It's going to keep moving forward with or without you. So you need to find a way to counteract that and become your own person and really live the life that you're expected to live for your own terms, not by what other people think. But again, going back to middle school, the thing that helped me throughout middle school was the company I kept with my friends, the the amount of time that I spent away from home just to keep my mind off of reality, and the role that sports played in my life to kind of make me into a better person. And then things were pretty all right for a good amount of time, and then heading into high school, life turned to shit again. For me, my 8th grade summer, we took our vacation to the Outer Banks, and then going into high school, I couldn't really think of anything more to look forward to. High school is a time to where you really build your strong friendships for a long time to come. This is when you start to grow into a young adult that you kind of aren't expecting to become, or you look forward to becoming, or you're scared about, and you're just anxious. You have all these emotions. We're all going through puberty at the same time. And going into my freshman year of high school, at freshman football practice one day, we went to practice with the varsity team. And what happened at warm-ups is something that has been in the back of my mind since that very day. In football, anyone that's played Pop Warner or high school or seen movies, um, you know, they put a piece of tape on the front of your helmet with your last name so people can get to know who you are the first couple days. During warm-ups, I ran past an older coach who's been around for a long time. He saw the front of my helmet and the last name, and his exact words, I shit you not, were, "Oh shit, another fucking Pisano. Can't wait to see how this goes." And I just didn't know how to respond. So I kept running. There were some people that chuckled, some people that didn't know what happened, and some people that didn't really give a fuck. But for me, it destroyed me. My reputation once again preceded me going into high school, and I didn't know how to respond. So again, the benefit of all the shit that's happened to me is it helped put a chip on my shoulder for the rest of my life. And again, I wanted to be able to prove this guy wrong, that he wasn't who I thought he was. But then I realized that he was not worth my time or my anger or my depression or my trouble. All I wanted to do was prove myself right, that I'm a better person than people assumed me to be. And they had no right to assume that because I was a straight A student. I never got into trouble, and I was sociable and friendly with everybody I came into contact with, especially adults. You know, one of my favorite things about the friends that I had was their parents were awesome people, and every time I saw them, I was delighted to see these people. And not to speak highly of myself, a lot of my friends' parents were delighted to see me all the time. I was just the person I was, the kind of charisma I carried at such a young age because I was forced to grow up and I was able to carry that with myself. So this guy literally had the fucking balls to say that about me and my family. And I've never wanted to punch an older motherfucker in his face more than this time. His name is Coach Mags, for all of you that had him as a coach. And this is something that has been on the chip on my shoulder since that day and will never go away no matter what. It's just one of those things that I've been carrying with me for a long time. It doesn't bother me, it doesn't anger me, it doesn't get me upset. It's just something that I use as more fuel to the fire. At that time, going into high school, um, both my older cousins have already dropped out. My little brother has already dropped out, so I'm the only Pisano left in the high school, where it should have been four of us. Again, you know, at the time you don't fully understand, but years later you start to understand that school really isn't for everybody, whether that's college, high school, whatever it may be. Everyone has their reason, and this isn't to say that, yeah, okay, they probably didn't make the best decision at the time, but years later they're all doing great. They're all in a great place in their lives right now, and yeah, it could have sped up the process of them getting to where they are now, haven't finished high school, but they didn't, and that's okay. And I'm not using this to be an advocate of dropping out of high school or even dropping out of college. I finished high school. I was the first in my family to do so, to graduate, and then I went on to graduate college after 6 years of college. And I was the first one in my family to do that. And we'll get there. But the point is that it's not for everybody, and that is okay. This isn't an advocacy for you to drop out of high school. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can't judge people based off the decisions they make if it doesn't affect your life. And it didn't really impact my life. It didn't affect my life. The only thing that it gave me was a reputation. And it was something that I changed very fucking quickly. Again, I said earlier that I was a straight A student, and that didn't change. Um, Going through freshman year, I made a reputation for myself, and I let people start to learn who I was based off who I actually was, not what they've heard about me, not what my last name was, or not what they expected me to turn out to be. I was always someone to meet a lot of people, and I could make a friend out of anybody. Yes, I had my strong clique, my strong group of friends, and an even smaller group of best friends, but at the same time, I got to know everybody. I was friendly with everybody, and I wasn't that person to really just shun people because they were different. I actually wanted to dismantle that. So much so that in my senior year of high school, one of my friends, who wasn't a close friend, was bullying a kid with Down syndrome, and I stopped him from doing so because I didn't like what I saw. And that's one thing to implore you guys to do is when you see the wrong thing happening, you need to step in and stop it. I think it's all of our purpose in life to really make sure that the right thing happens, and doing the right thing is always the right thing. Whether that's fighting one of your friends over being a bully to someone with Down syndrome, whether that's telling somebody that they're wrong, whatever it may be. So going along through high school, um, my freshman year of high school, my father ended up dating somebody that he spent several years with. He ended up moving in with her really quickly. Um, Again, obviously, my parents are split up. My older brother ended up living with my mother, and my younger brother ended up living with my father, which left me alone with my grandmother. Um, at the time, this is where I talk about how often I felt abandoned and how often I felt alone. My grandmother and I lived alone for 2.5 years. Obviously, I saw my parents and I saw my brothers, and there were over a lot back and forth, and vice versa with me going over there. But 2.5 years living under a roof with just one person, being my grandmother, having both parents alive and living, both brothers alive and well, and not living with either of them. That can do a lot of damage to a 14-year-old kid. I thought I was the problem. That's simply put. I thought I was the problem. Um, at this point in my life, I always thought, why me? Why me? Why is this happening? And then years later, I started to realize that why not me? And when I say that, I mean it challenged me to grow up quicker than I had to and quicker than I wanted to. And I appreciate every single second of that. Yes, it was tough. Yes, it was hard. And it was scary as fuck. But again, I talk about my grandmother being the most important person in my life for several years. And it was during this time that we built that relationship. She did everything for me. My parents were still around. They did a lot for me. But living with my grandmother really helped turn me into the man I am today. And, the life lessons she instilled in me, the kind of maturity that I was forced to grow into because of my lifestyle. And outside of that, high school football kind of at the time saved me from who I was becoming. And who I was becoming was a fucking agitated, angry little fucking kid. And I wanted no part of it. And, high school football, playing out on the field and trying to play year round and work out year round, my coaches became my second fathers. My my teammates became my brothers, and these were people that I played football with since I was 8 years old. So I used that as my outlet. That was what saved me at the time until years later, after I got done drinking, fitness saved me. So, I've always been an active kid. Um, and throughout high school, this is really what saved me from becoming the person that I thought I was going to become. When I was 13 years old, a bunch of us were playing Manhunt, and I was playing, and part of the group was my older brother, my older cousin, and then a bunch of other neighborhood kids. And at the end of the game, we all sat down. Actually, after playing Ding Dong Ditch, if any of you know what that is, we sat down and then they lit up this little brown thing, and I didn't know what it was. It ended up being a joint. I'm sorry, a blunt, and it was marijuana. And they passed it around the circle, and then it got to me. What happens next is what I believe to be one of, if not the most important decisions that I've ever made in my entire life. And it sounds a little dramatic, but to me, it doesn't because of the impact drugs and alcohol played on my life. To where if I made the opposite decision of what I made, I think the direction in which I went would have changed. The blunt got to me. I looked at it. I put it to my lips, and then I passed it to my right. I didn't smoke it, and to this day, at 29 years old, I've never smoked weed in my entire life. Now, I never shunned marijuana. I don't care if you smoke weed. I don't care how you feel about it. What I do care about is people that disrespect me for not caring about smoking weed. I had friends that made fun of me for years in high school for not smoking weed. I had people that made fun of me for thinking weed was bad when I never said weed was bad. I just never fucking cared about it. And to this day, I'll never try it because I have no need to. Drugs impacted my parents' relationship. It's had a big impact on my life, and I really believed myself to have an addictive personality, and I thought the worst would be to come if I had smoked weed. So that is one of the best decisions I ever made. Came when I was 13 years old. I really think this goes back to being a peer mediator in second grade, and I always envisioned myself as being a leader and not a follower. And I never wanted to be someone to follow suit or conform to society or do what you're expected to do. And I think the life that I've lived to this point has helped portray that. And I think being a leader makes you your own person. And making a decision like that turned me into more of a leader than I already thought I was becoming. So moving on through high school, I started to build this reputation about myself in a good light. I had a lot of good friends. I had a lot of good teachers behind me, and a lot of teachers knew about what was going on at home. And then at one point, my sophomore year of high school, my house became the party house. This is when we really started to experiment with alcohol. A lot of drunk nights at my house when it was just me and my grandmother. And one big mistake that I made was lying to my grandmother that entire year. I probably threw 30 to 40 parties that year. My grandmother's room was on the top floor of the house, and I threw a party in the basement almost every weekend. I would lie to her and tell her that I was having 10 to 15 friends over to hang out, and it would end up being 30 to 40 person bangers. We would get fucked up. I would put beer cans and empty bottles into a trash bag and put it in the fort in our backyard. One day that summer, she was cleaning up the backyard. There was a hole in the fort. She saw 8 garbage bags full of beer cans and liquor bottles, called me up at work, and reamed me the fuck out. And if you've ever gotten in trouble, which 100% of you have, don't lie, the worst thing you can ever hear out of somebody's mouth is not, I'm mad at you. It's, I'm disappointed in you. I felt like fucking shit. From that day forward, I never threw another party at my house ever again. I did not want to disappoint my grandmother. The only other time I ever had a party or friends over to pregame was only after asking her and getting her permission. Now, going through high school, you know, puberty obviously played a role. You have all these emotions and feelings about life and everything going on, and mine were amplified because of my situation at home. But I used this time to really grow into the person that I wanted to become because I was in control of that myself. I mean, there was one moment sophomore year of high school when I thought about quitting football. And I had a friend by the name of Ricky Lister who came to me at a baseball game one day at our Little League field because I told him I was going to quit. And he talked me out of it. And Ricky, if you ever hear this, I doubt you will. Hope you're doing well. I just want to say thank you because that at that point you kind of saved me from the person that I could have become if I quit football. Who's to say I wouldn't have dropped out of high school like everyone? I didn't know what direction I would have went, and staying in football through the end of high school is really what helped me. Also, in that year, sophomore year of high school, this is now 2006, 2007. I really wanted to take my leadership to the next level, and when I say that is, I really wanted to take the next jump of becoming the mature person that I knew I was becoming, and I kind of again, I've said several times that I've always believed myself to be a natural born leader, and I wanted to show that. So, at the end of sophomore year of high school, I decided to run for student council as a class officer. I had no hopes. All I cared was to get on the class board. I really didn't care about the position. I just wanted to be a part of a group to kind of help make a change going into my junior year of high school. I was playing football. I had a lot of great friends. I was surrounded by a lot of good people, and I just really wanted to take the next jump. So I applied for a class officer, and towards the end of the year, after they did the voting, um, it was one day before the summer hit when they announced who the class officers would be for the junior class. When they announced over the loudspeaker in high school who the junior class advisors would be. We get to all the way through the vice president for the class, and my name has not been called. So I'm thinking that I will not be a class officer, that there's always next year. The class advisor announced over the loudspeaker the 2008 junior class president would be Louis Pisano. And I just looked like this because I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to expect, and I have no idea why I got there. Now, again, in high school, this isn't the craziest thing in the world. This isn't the craziest accolade, but for me, it was just another thing that I was able to do to prove to myself that I wasn't who people thought I was. I wasn't who some people probably even wanted me to be, which was a high school dropout or a problem child. And for me, it was just the next thing to really kind of, you know, help with my maturation process and become the young man that I knew I was starting to become. Went to junior year of high school. Again, I'm still playing football. This is at a point in my life where life was really good. My last couple of years of high school were really good for me. My family was doing well. My mom was healthy. My dad was healthy. Both were working. My parents were good, or my brothers were good. Life was good again. We weren't the all American family, but for me at this point, my junior year of high school, it was an amazing year. At this point, we're all 16, 17 years old getting our license. We're all drinking, we're partying, typical high school bullshit. And then this is when my emotions really started to get carried away. On one side, doing football practice, weightlifting in the off season, I was one person, and then on the weekends and at home, I'm a completely different person. And I was starting to split into two different people, and I started to realize that, but I couldn't stop it. On weekends we would drink and party, and more often than not, when I got fucked up or blacked out, I would cry, and I would cry because I was afraid for my life. And when I say afraid for my life was I missed my family, and I didn't know what to expect out of life. And I had all these emotions and all this anger and all this depression and all of this feeling alone that really started to take control over my mental health. So this really almost began to shape the person that I was. And then my junior year of high school, heading into senior year, is when I really started to dive into working out. We had a strength and conditioning coach by the name of Joe McCullough. Joe, if you watch this or listen to this, thank you for everything. This man has taught me 90% of what I know in the fitness world. Still to this day, he's still schooling me. Um, so for football, we went and trained at his facility, strength and speed training, and he gave all of us a month free. After that, you had to pay. It was $300 for, I believe, whatever, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it was, and I couldn't afford it. My parents couldn't afford it. I can barely afford college applications, and I just knew I was going to be screwed. So Joe found out, thanks to Coach Klein, also one of my best and greatest mentors throughout my entire life to this day. Um, so Joe came to me and offered to train me for free because he knew my passion for football. He knew how much it meant to me, and he knew how to help me emotionally and to control my anger and my stress and my anxiety and my depression. And I owe this guy a lot for that. And I don't know how I'll ever repay you, but what you've been able to do to me to bring me from a mental and emotional health perspective. Physical fitness is third tier, but mental and emotionally for me, you really helped me get back on the path of being successful and being positive um, until a year later. So going into my senior year of football, I put on 25 pounds of muscle, and I was still only 145 pounds. I was never a star athlete, at least in high school. I wasn't a starter. I played running back and linebacker and safety and special teams. And the best thing about football for me was my brothers. And when I say my brothers, I mean my best friends, my teammates, and everyone around me because being out on that field just made everything better. It put my mind at ease. It was my escape. It was my escape from what my life was like off the football field. And I didn't know what my future held. So senior year of football comes around. Um, I'm sorry, senior year of high school comes around, and it's our senior year of football. It's my last year. I knew I was going to play football in college, and I knew this was the last chance that I had to be with my 45, 50 brothers to just really enjoy that part of senior year of high school. I know it was a great season. It was a lot of fun. We lost in the semifinals of the playoffs to Middletown South, who I will hate for the rest of my life for that. And then we had one more game on Thanksgiving against Monmouth Regional, uh, who we beat the shit out of. That was the last time I walked off the football field, and after that, things really started to go downhill for my senior year. I knew I had no future in football, especially in college. I was 5'3". I was 145 pounds soaking wet, and I knew I would just be wasting time. As much as I love football, as much as I would have loved to continue playing, even at a D3 level, paying for college, whatever it may be, I didn't think it would have been worth my time. So I found other routes. And, 3.5 years removed from being called a goddamn Pisano and, an old ass football coach having these expectations of me, my senior year comes around and I became the senior class president. So my junior and senior years of high school, I'm the class president of the class officer team. Coming from somebody who had a reputation that preceded him to become this shady high school kid, for me that was a win. And I knew the type of person that I wanted to become. I didn't want to be a bitter person that dwelled on the past, and I wouldn't let shit like that affect me. Even to this day, I'm somebody that believes in not caring about what people think because they're not going to pay your bills. They're not going to live your future. They're not going to be the person that makes your success or happiness come to you. The only person that's going to do that is yourself. And if you go through life allowing people to dictate the kind of person that you are, you're just proving them right. And the one thing I always wanted to do was to prove myself right. And that was that I controlled the person I was going to become and that I would always do that for the rest of my life. So again, senior year, I'm senior class president. And then I'm homecoming king, I'm prom king. I get all these accolades. And for me, it wasn't about the accolades. I didn't care about that. What all that meant to me was that I became my own person in my own way, and I succeeded at my own level on my own way. For me, school was always very important because nobody in my family graduated high school. Nobody in my family went to college, my parents included. It was really important for me to do that. I was a straight A student, and it was something that I was really proud of. And going into college, life took a turn again for the worst right after high school. So we go through high school graduation. I had to give a big speech, being the class president. Um, and I had all these high hopes and aspirations about going to East Carolina University. I go down there, go through orientation. I get my class schedule. I have my roommate. I have my room picked out. And, this university is something out of a storybook. If anyone that's seen it or has been there, it's a beautiful campus in Greenville, North Carolina. And a week before I was supposed to move away in August 2009, I had my bags packed. I was ready to go. I was ecstatic. I get a call from the financial aid and admissions office. They told me that my financial aid fell through, and they told me that I owed them $10,000 for the first semester, and that I could either pay that in check or a money order. And my heart dropped, and my stomach emptied out. And I didn't know what to say. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a friend playing a prank on me until I realized that it was a North Carolina number, and it was fucking real. I panicked. I went to my parents. I went to my aunt who always helped me out. I went to my grandmother. I didn't know what to do. And obviously, we didn't have that kind of money. I didn't know what happened with my financial aid. And then it come to find out that my dad was never one fond of doing taxes, and that came to light, and I lost my financial aid. After that, I scrambled to get into community college, at Brookdale Community College, which looking back on that, this is something that, one of those things that you couldn't control in life, and something that everything happens for a reason. That same thought process is that community college ended up being the best thing to happen to me, or that could have happened to me. Um, I get into community college, I do that for 2 years, and then I ended up transferring to Rowan University, where I had some of the best memories of my life. I got into the career path that I'm in now, and I have some of the best friends in my life that I'll have with me for the rest of my life. So, losing that admission into East Carolina wasn't the worst thing, but it was something at the time put me into a deep depression. So now it's 2009, 2010 school year. I'm a freshman at Brookdale Community College, and all I cared about was drinking, making money, and lifting weights. And it was awful. I woke up, went to class, went home, worked out, and I drank. And this happened for months on end. One thing that remained is I continued to stay active, I continued to work out, but this is something that, really impacted my life heavily. On top of that, it was around my freshman year of college where my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Um, and again, it's just one thing after another. You think life can't get any worse, and you think that the worst things have happened to you, and then everything just piles on top of you like dog shit. And then you feel like dog shit, and you don't know how to react. You don't know how to respond, and you just push through life. You find a way to break through. You find the things that work for you. And what worked for me at the time was drinking. I drank to the end of a fucking bottle all the time. It helped ease the pain for me. It helped me feel more sane. It helped me feel more normal. And I was a borderline alcoholic. If I got admitted into a rehab facility, I probably would have been considered an alcoholic. But luckily for me, I was still a straight A student. I still cared about school more than anything, and I still had a lot of great people around me, including friends and family. That whole process helped me keep me on the straight and narrow. And then I had a friend that went to Rowan University. This is my sophomore year in college now. I went to visit him, and then that weekend I drove home and I applied to transfer into Rowan University. And then come the 2011-2012 school year, I transferred into Rowan as an undergrad, as an education major. I was doing education and pursuing that for 2 years at the time. My high school football coach had offered me a coaching job as soon as I finished college. And then the principal at the time had offered me a teaching job for history as soon as I graduated college. Um, it meant a lot to me. It was something that I wanted to do for a long time, was be a history teacher. My grandfather was a history teacher for a long time, Rutgers University, Seton Hall, Georgetown, and it was something that I wanted to pursue. During my sophomore year of high school, I had stolen my older brother's ID. We looked alike a lot at the time, and I got into every single bar that I could go to. Strip clubs, the bar, nightclubs, you name it, I got into. I never had an issue. There was one time that I almost got caught. It was my 20th birthday, and I was just too drunk. Luckily, there was a fight that ended up going on in the bar while I was getting ID'd, and the bouncer said, "Just get in, have a good night," and he went to deal with the fight. That was the one time I almost ever got caught. Other than that, I used my brother's ID. And then when I went to visit my buddy at Rowan University, I was the cool kid that always brought the alcohol because everyone else was underage. Um, so I would go down to Rowan University 1 week in a month. I would face a 750 of Captain Morgan per night and not black out. To give you guys an idea of that, I was 150 pounds at the time, facing a 750 of alcohol of rum and not blacking out. It was the epitome of almost rock bottom. The only thing I had going for me at the time was the fact that I was still in school. Um, I went through a very dark period for about 3 to 4 years where I had no control over my emotions, my anxiety, my depression, my drinking habits, and it really controlled my life. Luckily I got to a point where mentally I was able to get over it. And it wasn't until I was 23 years old to where fitness changed my life. And I'll say that for another episode, but I want to keep going here with this topic of no matter how good life is, it's never as good as it seems. No matter how bad life is, it's never as bad as it seems. Things can always be much worse, things can always be much better, and you are not the only person that has been through the things that you've been through. There are so many people out there that are successful and happy that have been through the very same things you have, if not worse. I know there's people that are so much more successful than me that have been through so much worse in life. And I know that I've been through a lot worse of people to follow. And, I hope this resonates with a lot of you, and I hope this helps open your eyes. Well, returning back to college, I transferred into Rowan University. This is 2 years after my mother got diagnosed with breast cancer. I spent 1 year at Rowan. I met some of the best friends that I'll ever have for the rest of my life. And then going into what would have been my senior year, I lost my financial aid again. My father didn't do his taxes again. My mother was out of work for a year, so she didn't have taxes, and I lost my financial aid. So I'm out of school again for the second time. My mother has breast cancer. I don't have school. I don't have a job. What did I do? I resorted to drinking again. Topic of today's conversation. Um, during this time, I took the year off from school just to kind of reassess whether or not it was going to be worth it for me. 2 to 3 times a week, I would drive my mom to and from her chemotherapy treatments at the hospital. And then I was actually in the middle of a retail job working for the Ed Hardy clothing line. So my life for that year was working out, drinking, and taking my mom to chemotherapy. It was a fucking awful, awful year. During this time, I pretty much reached the lowest of lows. Before that, my first year at Rowan University, actually, one day I was driving my car and I got pulled over. I got pulled over right outside of my dorm, and cop pulls me over, asks my license and registration and insurance. He says, "Son, do you know why I'm stopping you today?" I said, "No, sir. I've been following the speed limit. I've been using my blinkers. What can I do for you today?" He says, "You don't have insurance." I said, "What?" And he pretty much grilled me. Come to find out, I called my father, whose insurance I was on. My father had unfortunately gotten a DUI a couple weeks earlier. I was on his insurance at the time. He did not let me know. I drove like I had insurance, and there was no insurance. So what happened was my car got impounded, and I had to spend $700 to get my car out of the impound, pay for a ticket, and get my own insurance. That $700 was saved up to go to my cousin's bachelor party, to get my passport, and to go to Canada. Obviously, I was not able to do that. So again, just one more thing to add on top of the pile of shit to deal with. So much shit happened from the time that I was 16 to fucking 24 years old, to where more happened in that span than almost any other person that I know in their entire lives at this point. Fast forwarding to the year that I was off of school, that I was working, that I just lost my financial aid again for the second time in 3 years. This is the year where I started to hit rock bottom. And then the company I worked for, Ed Hardy, went out of business December of 2012. And this was also the same Christmas that I asked my mom for Sean T's Insanity video and a LeBron James basketball jersey. If you guys remember from episode 1 of the Wake Up and Work podcast, I didn't touch insanity for 3.5 months. And then Saturday, March 2nd, 2013, I woke up completely disgusted at the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of rock bottom, and I told myself that I would change my life forever that day. And that day was the day that I decided to wake up and work. On that, I'm going to end this episode with the same thing I've been talking about all along, is that no matter what you've been through, no matter what you're going through right now, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You need to find it. You need to find it for yourself. For me, that was fitness. Fitness changed my life. Fitness saved my life. And fitness is the person that brought me to who I am today. I've dealt with so much shit in life to really question the cards I've been dealt. And for so long, I questioned if I was meant to be happy or successful. And so long, I questioned if I would ever be happy or successful. And then from that day, March 2nd, 2013, fitness showed me that the harder I work, the better my results will be in life. And, I look at it as an analogy to where, honestly, to this point, now 7 years later, the harder I've worked, the more I've gotten out of life. And that will carry on with me for the rest of my life. Guys, I promise you, the longer you go through life thinking, woe is me, thinking, why do I have the life that I have? Thinking, why does this always happen to me? Thinking, why am I the only one this happens to? You're just hurting yourself. You're hurting your future. You're setting your future up for failure, and you're not giving yourself the opportunity to be happy or successful. And the whole goal of Wake Up and Work is to help you take control of your life and to help you create your own happiness and success. I am not at the level of happiness or success that I want to be, but I'm satisfied to the point to where I am today, with an incredible girlfriend, our incredible 2 dogs, and an incredible apartment that we live in downtown San Diego, living the life that we choose to be living right now. I have so many more expectations to exceed, so much more of a higher level to get myself to, but I was able to take control of my own life. I took control back from that bottom of the barrel and bottom of the bottle that I was at. I took control and I started to create my own happiness. My goal and my purpose of the Wake Up and Work podcast, the Wake Up and Work brand, is to help you guys do the same thing, no matter what it takes. Whether it's one person a day, 1,000 people a day for the rest of my life. Guys, believe me when I tell you, I've had so many reasons to give up. I've had so many reasons to give in. I've had so many reasons to cave, and so many reasons to not go after the things I've wanted to in life, and so many reasons to go down the path of no success or to conform to society and do what I've been expected to do, but I chose not to. And yes, it's a lot easier said than done. But what it really takes is for you to kind of wake up and to work on yourself every single day until you get to a point to where you have complete control. You need to find the one thing that you can do that'll take your mind away from the previous lifestyle that you've had to get you to the next level. For me, that was fitness. For somebody else, it could be drawing. For you, it could be singing. It can be writing music. It can be playing an instrument. It can be playing a sport. It can be joining a club. It can be being a high school teacher. It can be anything. What I implore you to do is find what works for you if you're going through the same issues, if you are questioning your life and your success and your level of happiness and where you want to be, and find what works for you to help to take that control back to create your own happiness. I know I got very deep today. There's a lot more deepness to come. There's a lot more in-depth topics to talk about, but I think we've done enough today. I wanted to thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate your time, your support, your consideration, and your feedback and your criticism. It is very much welcomed. You can catch the Wake Up and Work podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and of course on YouTube. I appreciate your time. Check out wakeupandwork.com. I'll put it here in the link. That's wakeup, the letter N, work.com. Check me out at Lewis_Pisano on Instagram and wakeup_and work on Instagram as well. Thank you guys again. I'll see you next time.